126 to 108, the final score from New Orleans. The Toronto Raptors fall to the New Orleans Pelicans and Zion Williams. Superstar status Zion Williams last night, despite not having a couple of his cohorts. But let's talk about it. First off, shouts out to Team Canada, currently down just one goal, battling Morocco in a game that really has no impact on the remainder of the tournament, but definitely has an impact on Canadian pride when it comes to the World Cup. But let's search for some positives coming out of that game against the New Orleans Pelicans for the Toronto Raptors. And I guess we'll start with Gary Trent, because we talked about Gary Trent a little bit earlier in the week, and the fact that moved out of the starting lineup tonight. I believe Scotty Barnes was re-injected into the starting lineup for Juancho Hernan-Gomez, but Thad Young stayed in that lineup with 35 points, 65 points for the bench, but 35 of them came from Gary Trent. How does this is this like the best case scenario for Nick Nurse, knowing that Gary came off the bench and got big numbers, because we know how important that is for a guy going into a situation where he could be, trying to get a new deal, Sherm?
I think it's important for Gary Trent to continue to approach it the way that he's approaching it. He's coming into the game. He's not worried about starting or coming off the bench. He's coming in and he's doing what he's supposed to do. And he struggled this season. So for him to find his rhythm coming off the bench is a positive thing. For Nick Nurse, now you think about that bench unit. Chris Boucher has been the most consistent player off the bench. Well, if Gary really embraces this role in an ongoing way, this could be very good for Nick Nurse. The ability to bring two guys into the game that are going to change the game significantly when they hit the floor. And look, Gary's going to get looks in a second unit situation. He's going to get more opportunities. He doesn't have to, kind of be a third wheel to Fred and Pascal in the starting lineup, sometimes a fourth with OG or Scotty. Like, he can be one of the main guys coming off the bench. It was great to see him shoot the ball the way we're used to seeing him shoot the ball in that game against New Orleans, 6 of 11 from the three-point line. But his defense hasn't slipped the whole time, and that's important. He's playing well defensively, but he's finding himself offensively. And who knows, maybe he can get to that sixth man of the year conversation if he buys into this role and continues to succeed.
Good ball pressure defensively, 3 steals. A lot of people will say, and steals is not always a measure of good defense. It's a measure of maybe gambling sometimes.
Allen Iverson.
Well, I mean, steals is not always a good indicator, but when you look at it in the whole framework with his ball pressure, harassing guys, haranguing guys on the perimeter, I thought his defense was better, and it has been better since Nick said we need that from him. And it was interesting. The game that Gary Jr. came back and had a bad night, we were doing our wrap-up from our radio location courtside, and we saw this fur coat stream by us, behind us, and I looked, and it was Senior. I was like, "What's up?" He goes, "We going to the gym." Like he was going to the gym with Gary Jr. to work out with him, and he kept talking about getting his legs under a shot. And you can see, you put the time in, you get in the gym and do your work, it pays off. And to Sherm's point, if Gary does adapt and embrace that role of coming off the bench, now you have 2 guys with that energy, not just Boucher. You've got Boucher and Gary Trent, and the other guys. You've got the possibility or the potential to form a unit where a bench unit where roles are clearly defined, depending on who the other guys are on the floor with them. So you can take some of the starters out, have a hybrid unit, again, with a couple of energy guys. There's no such thing as garbage time for a guy like that, Gary Trent, looking for his game. Okay, we're down 25. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to get right, and if I get right, I know that will help the team. So I thought in a very difficult night, it was a silver lining for the Raptors, Gary Trent Jr. breaking out.
As Raptors fans, we're familiar with what a bench mob can do, because those points are the same whether the starters are on the floor or not, and that's a wave of energy, and it can kind of close the gap oftentimes if you don't have what you need.
It's not who starts all the time, man. It's who finishes, and can he be in there even as a decoy or as a potential threat at the end of the game if he's got it going.
And being featured is more likely to happen in that second unit for Gary Trent Jr. So, again, if he embraces that role, I can see this really being good for him in
against
an ongoing
second
way.
unit guys on the other squad, too. Right?
Especially as Pascal comes out playing the way he started the game. But let's talk about the starts and the defensive start, because we saw Great defense a couple nights ago from this Raptors starting unit. Couple tweaks to the starting lineup, but I don't imagine that Juancho Hernan-Gomez was the linchpin that led to a great defensive outing a few nights ago. So what did you guys see shift, Jonsey? I'll start with you on the floor. Was it a matter of it's a road game because we've seen this team struggle on the road and they just didn't have their legs under them? Or was there something on the floor you noticed about this Pelicans team?
I thought it was a matter of energy.
Yeah.
And not that Toronto didn't have it. New Orleans had more. And the way they started the game. Like Pascal was a one-man band over the first 4 or 5 possessions. And all of a sudden, the Pelicans settled in and said, oh, okay, that's how it is. We got to use that kind of energy. And they took their energy to Toronto's level and then beyond, and the Raptors weren't able to match it. And, man, this guy Zion Williamson, they always say, well, keep him off his left hand. He is so quick for a guy that size. Look at that one. The double team comes. Scotty couldn't get there in time. He goes left, beats the guy on the baseline. Now 2 guys are out of position, and the help is not there to rotate over. I just thought New Orleans had better, greater energy for a sustained period of time at the start of the game as opposed to Toronto.
Well, the Cleveland game, Pascal came back.
Yeah.
And we saw it's like getting a vitamin shot. Absolutely. Like there was this injection of energy to start the game, and Pascal led that charge. And Cleveland really didn't have a response for him. Against New Orleans saw that start and said, we got to jump on them early. And I thought the Raptors tried, but New Orleans were better. And again, we know this. Unless you're stealing possessions by turning a team over, if you allow a team to shoot over 72% from the floor in a quarter, you're probably going to lose that quarter.
34-18.
Well, 100%. And then the second quarter, they shot over 60%. So New Orleans found the rhythm, and credit New Orleans. They're not this team that they used to be.
No.
Especially when Zion's there, even without McCollum, even without Ingram, this is a good team.
Props to Willie Green.
100%. Willie Green's doing a great job. David Griffin has done a great job with that organization. But the Raptors themselves, they ran into a buzzsaw, and they didn't have the energy they had in the Cleveland game from Pascal's return. But this is not, again, we're not unused to seeing the Raptors struggle in the first quarter. It's been something that they've tried to work through this whole season. So to find a team like New Orleans that jumps on them and they can't really get out of it, but in typical Raptor fashion,
yes,
they make it interesting and make a comeback later in the game.
I thought the turnovers hurt Toronto too, as Sherm said to the point. Raptors usually win that category in terms of forcing the other team into turnovers, scoring off that. They're number 1 in points off turnovers, number 1 in fast break points. When you get live ball turnovers, it's something's going to happen positive for you more often than not at the other end. You can get a lot of that against New Orleans. And when you look at their own numbers, here's a team that turns it over. Number 1 in the NBA with fewest turnovers, the Raptors, about 12 a game. They were at 9 or 10 in the first half. That's giving the other team more possessions. You look at some of the other key numbers. The Raptors usually get 12 to 13 more shots a game than the other team. Even if you're a bad shooting team and you make 4 of those, and a couple of them are threes, there's 10 points right there. They didn't get any of that last night, and I thought that hurt them.
All right, it's time for some ball movement, so we got to swing the ball over to our very own Savannah Hamilton. Savannah, talk about the energy in the building in that fourth quarter.
Akil, after the Raptors were down over 30 points at one point in the game, they managed to cut the lead to just 11 points for the Pelicans. And a big tribute goes to not just Gary Trent Jr., because I know you guys talked about him, but he did drive the offense in that stretch. But you got to talk about Chris, OG, Juancho, Delano. They were able to put consecutive stops together, as Coach mentioned afterwards in the press conference to follow the game. You know, he was happy for those guys. However, it did come, let's be honest, it came a little too late. And also Zion Williamson, give him credit as well. He was able to put the Raptors away when they made that run. So unfortunately, it didn't carry over to the end of the game. However, it could carry over to Brooklyn. So hopefully the Raptors start in a better spot, don't have to dig themselves out of a hole, and we'll see what happens. Akil?
Thank you very much, Savannah. Talk about a tough guy to go up against Zion Williamson. And again, you guys mentioned the comeback, got it down to 11. But sometimes when you do that, you kind of wear out whatever energy you do have in a comeback situation, Sherm.
And no Fred VanVleet.
Yes.
Right? I mean, he's a lot of the brains of what they do in situations like that when they need possessions, they need the proper people in the proper place to get the ball to them. Fred orchestrates that at a very high level with consistency. But it's like I said earlier, it's typical of the Raptors. They're not going to quit. They are going to fight. They're going to continue to swing no matter how big the opponent is, how big the deficit is. But marching up that hill takes energy. And trying to get over that hump, they didn't have it. And like Savannah said, Zion is a different animal. He had 2 possessions that ended that run for the Raptors. Just decisively shut it down.
I thought it was interesting because, Sherm, to your point, you're down 31 and you go on a 12-0 run. Well, you're still down 19, right? And that's a big run. And you need one more of those plus. Now you're facing time. And I thought really key possession. They had it down to 11. They made New Orleans turn it over. They're about to get out and run. The pass
turned it over.
Yeah, the pass is kind of behind Gary. He's reaching back for it. It gets turned over. And then right after that, Zion goes on blocks a shot, dunk.
Momentum killer.
Yeah, and that's when you, like you said, Akil, you're pushing that Sisyphus, Greek mythology. You're pushing that rock up the hill, and you stop for a bit to take a break, and the rock rolls back on you, and you're like, man, I haven't got the energy to get to the top again. And that's exactly what happened.
It's interesting. The camera clicked onto Juancho's face, and you could see it in the moment. I don't know why the camera went to him, but you could see it in the moment. He was just kind of like, that's the one. Yeah. That's the one.
We were there.
Yeah, right there. Get that play. Get another bucket, potentially a free throw line opportunity. You continue the momentum. You continue to find the energy to fight back. And then, tip your hat to the Raptors, though. They could have given up in that game.
Well, you touched on it, too. No Fred VanVleet, 2 techs. I think we're going to be in consensus about this, but let's talk about our impressions of those 2 technicals. I know Jonsey, not too impressed. You mentioned before the broadcast, you almost didn't even see it.
I didn't even see the first one. Sherm had to tell me that it happened when they showed Fred on camera, and then the camera was off him, and he got the technical. This has always been my thing about, particularly the NBA, where you're in such close proximity to the officials. They're in the middle of the action. That the court isn't the venue. The court isn't that big. It's not like a football field or like a hockey rink or a soccer pitch. Like, they're right there. You cannot legislate emotion out of the game, and the referees understand that. And we had the meeting with them at the beginning of the year, and they say they will let spontaneous reactions go as long as they dissipate within time.
Yeah,
man.
That looked like it fell under that guy's those rules.
It did.
Those words are so subjective.
They are. Fred, the second technical, I thought he was fouled by Alvarado.
100%.
And Kevin Cutler was standing right there, didn't call it. And Fred said, come on. Did you not see that? He fouled me. We were both involved. You were standing right there. That was, all of what he was saying in those 2 words. Come on. And the referees can't have a short fuse like that. And that's his best player.
Well,
that's their best player.
It does. But this is also, the culmination of feeling like you have gotten the bad side of a whistle. The Raptors throughout that game felt that they got the bad side of the whistle. Nick Nurse was on the officials. Fred was on the officials. I even saw at one point Christian Coloco was talking to you saying, no, that's not a foul, that's bad. And I'm like, Rook, slow down. You can't talk to officials like that. They will make you pay for that.
Don't build a reputation.
Pascal, Nick, Freddie, you have a bit more rope, but you can't. And I think what happens is at some point.
Obviously not for Freddie.
At some point, the officials get to that line they draw in the sand. And they get to that point where it's the next man. The next man, regardless of how emphatic or not, if it's anything that's over the line by a toenail, we're giving it. And it happened to be Fred. It's unfortunate. I don't think he deserved a technical for that. I thought he was fouled, like Jonsey said. But there's a build-up. Officials are human.
Yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie.
100%. And the Raptors were on them, and rightfully so. I felt the officials missed quite a few calls. But at some point, the officials are like, well, hold on a second. This isn't going to continue to happen. We've talked to you. We've had these conversations. Keeps on happening. There's a price to pay. Yeah. Unfortunate. Not right. The nature of it, though.
And it was Nick Nurse's group that paid that price, and now we head to Nick Nurse's thoughts on the game and the refereeing right now.
Defensively, and then tonight it seemed to be exactly the opposite of the start. What did you see in that regard?
First started off not getting our defense set up. It wasn't like it was numbers break situations, but it was just quick offense that we weren't getting back and getting ready to stop. And And you're right, we missed a whole bunch of execution things right off the bat there early, and I think I said in the first time out, I said we gotta get our defense set up. I mean, our defense is good when we play hard, when we execute our schemes, and I said we're not doing any of those three things right now, and of course we give up 40 points in the first quarter. So it was disappointing. We didn't play very good defense all night long, really.
How much did those 2 early fouls for Ananobi factor into what you could do against Williams?
Well, they definitely hurt, for sure. We haven't had that happen with him. Recently we've been able to put him on, their other team's best scorer, and he's been able to, do a good job on him. That obviously, changed. I think he got a second, and then he drove around him one time, and he kind of just had to let him go, and then it kind of, then we had to get him out of there and see what we could do from there. But we didn't have much other help either for him, when OG was out, and the other guys didn't guard him very, very well either.
And Thad's matchup with JV was just too much? I mean, you started Coloco in the second.
Yeah, I just thought it was a better chance for big-to-big matchup, right? And then let Thad play when they sub JV out, just a little bit matchup driven, yeah.
All right, the Raptors are happy to be getting out of New Orleans. Most people are happy to arrive and have a good time.
Well, they stayed overnight.
Yeah, they had their good time already, and they had their bad time. So let's talk about it. 3-8 on the road for a traditionally good Raptors organization, Sherm. Let's talk about what do you see a difference in anything other than just maybe energy and being comfortable in other people's buildings
And being healthy. I mean,
that's true. But this was the healthiest they've been in a long time.
Then they're still not completely healthy,
Yes.
but you're right. They are healthier, and it's a good thing to see. This team hasn't had consistency from a personnel standpoint this whole season. So you're going to be better with players that aren't used to playing as much at home than you are going to be on the road. The Raptors are 8-2 at home. The road issues, we know this. When you play on the road, it's about bunker mentality. It's about getting together and staying on the same page and being able to execute under duress and all that stuff. When you don't have leaders on the floor, it's tougher to do that. And you're relying on other people to get the job done.
Guys who haven't been in that situation.
100%. So that, to me, has a lot to do with their record on the road. And it's not a surprise that they're so good at home based on not having the same personnel. So, but to your point, Akil, yes, you've got to bring energy. You've got to, especially from the jump, you've got to get to teams early when you're on the road and establish that they're not going to dictate it.
Pascal had it.
Well,
He did. He did. But that's Pascal offensively.
Oh, yes.
Defensively, the Raptors weren't answering the call at all defensively. And that's where Nick Nurse hangs his hat. He's coached good defensive teams. New Orleans was getting what they wanted.
I think that's a huge part of it on the road. Huge part of it. The energy, a good start to say to that home team, hey, we're here, and we didn't come to be on your highlight reel. Like, we came to win. And with the personnel coming back and getting healthy, I think that gets better. This has traditionally been a very good road team. I mean, you look at road wins over the last little while, Raptors always in the 20s. That's a recipe for success, right? Be around 500 on the road and take care of stuff at home. And I just think that it's got to be – there have to be better starts on the road. You got to come out, got to hit first in every way for, win the first quarter. I mean, for those people that are into the analytics and the numbers of it all, the analytics show if you win the first and the third quarter, more often than not, you're winning the game. And the Raptors have struggled. I mean, they struggled last night in the first quarter. When they get off to a good start on the road, and that confidence is fueled also, 40 points last night, and then another 34. Coaches hate to give up 30-point quarters. They give up a 40 and a 34. I mean, they were down huge at halftime. They gave up 74 points. Got to be more emphatic, more energetic, hit first on the road.
I say this. The Raptors are one of those teams that early in the season were a very good fourth quarter team in terms of point differential. They need to be close in that first quarter. They're not going to win first quarters just because of how they approach games. For whatever reason, self-starting is either there or isn't. Sometimes you're going to be good, sometimes you're not going to be good. But you can't get run in the first quarter because the Raptors can come back on any team.
Underdog mentality.
They're great at that. You don't want to hang your hat on it, but that's what they've been able to do. But when the deficit is so big, that's where you're in problems. So they've just got to – they might not win the first quarter, but they just can't get blown out. They can't get beat up in the first quarter and give up 72% from the floor type of thing.
Other teams also know, as Sherm said, Toronto's DNA. Like, we might get up on these guys, but look out because they're not going to roll over. And when they feel a roll, the opponent, they're up 10, they want 12, they want 15, they want 20. They want to put that money in the bank because they know what Toronto's like. And Toronto's being known around the league for a team that plays hard, they come at you. So if you know that coming in and you're at home, you're generally coming out with energy.
Like
too.
a knockout artist in boxing. Doesn't matter how far behind they are
One
on the
punch.
cards.
That left hook,
One
man.
punch, man.
Here it
Don't
comes.
see
Well,
it coming.
there was lessons to be had coming out of New Orleans. So let's check in with the players and see what they took away from the game.
Can you explain why it goes that way? One night good, one night not good. Is there like any logic to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain it. I think again we got to keep our focus.
Can you explain why it goes that way? One night good, one night not good. Is there like any logic to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain it. I think again we got to keep our focus. Like, we all understand how good we can be on defense and all those different things, but we got to do it. It's not just a matter of like, oh, we know we got this or that. Like, but this is the NBA. Like, every single night is a challenge, and no matter who's out, who's not doing what, like, every team is coming out there to play, and the way we play, like, we got to rely on being who we are every single night. Like, we can't take nights off, and when we do, like, it shows, and it's not even hard to, like, we can't hide it. That's the craziest thing.
Yeah, Nick was talking about lack of defensive execution. Like everybody in the arena sees it.
Right.
Guys getting back cuts, getting open looks like. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, no, we got to keep focused. We got to have the focus on the game plan and go out there and execute at the highest level every single night. And, when we don't do that, like, it's clear as day.
Was there any breakdowns of communication on the defensive end?
No, I mean, I think again, like I said, we don't have the focus. Like, if they get, I don't know how many dunks and layups, and like, it's just like there's nothing really you can say. I mean, it is what it is. I think it's just we just got to move on, and at this point, go back, learn. Now we know that, like, I mean, we've known this for a little bit, but we just got to know that every single night we got to have the focus, the intensity, and be who we are as a team. And when we don't do that, like, it shows.
That was your first look at Zion, right?
Huh? I think so. Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen him.
Yeah.
I mean, playing against him, what's that like?
I mean, again, like, he got whatever he wanted tonight. Like, I don't think we gave him, like, enough. Like, to be honest, like, he played well. He had a lot of he made a lot of good plays. But, like, again, like, it was layup after layup after layup. He's fast. He's strong. Like, and like, those are not that type of players that we got to come in and be kind of like hesitant. Like, we gotta be on point, and he took advantage of it. Like, he was getting to wherever he wanted to get to, and yeah, he did everything for them tonight. Like, and I think we just didn't. Like, we weren't there, and he was there every single possession and got whatever he wanted.
Is there anything in it for Gary Trent Jr. to be in that second unit? Like, is there a positive there for you? Can you see a scenario where it's a good thing for you?
Anything coach drop is a good thing. Win, lose, or draw, we're gonna go with it. No matter how the situation is, and that's what it is.
The shots you're getting tonight seem to come more, pretty much all in the rhythm of the offense. Do you feel a little bit more comfortable tonight in the spot you were getting all those shots?
Whenever opportunity is given to me, I'm going to try my best to, go out there and do everything I can, showcase the work I put in, continue to keep building, continue to keep growing, and go from there.
Pascal was just in here saying that he's like not worried about you one bit, whether the shot drops or doesn't drop tonight. Obviously, it was clicking for you. How did it feel just to have the hot hand?
Just going to keep going and keep building. Like I always say, everything already written. So whatever I go out there and do, anybody go out there and do, your work gonna show. And again, it's already written. So.
That was Gary Trent looking as intense as ever. And speak of picking up the intensity. Up next for the Toronto Raptors are the Brooklyn Nets, a team who's been through just about everything you can go through as an NBA team in the season, with the amount of drama, roster overhaul, players in and out of the lineup. Now, Ben Simmons won't be available for the next game, but you've got two of the best players in the world on that roster. They've won 3 straight games now above 500. The Nets are a real contender like people thought they would be a year ago. After this summer, they thought, write them off. But let's talk about it, starting with the man that stirs the drink, and that is Kevin Durant, who one of the best on-ball players in the league, Sherm. But what we're going to talk about today is kind of his growth and maturation off the ball.
Yeah, and, Kevin Durant is an all-round player. A lot of times we get into conversations about the best player. Play both sides. Kevin Durant is so good. So here you see him. He doesn't have the ball, but he reads the defense. He's able to move into space, just gets to a soft spot. And this guy is a shot maker. It doesn't matter where he is. He finds a way to put that ball in the basket. And then in transition, understands how to find teammates, finds Joe Harris for a look. He doesn't shoot it, but Kevin Durant continues to move towards the basket. That defense is horrible, and he's able to get a dunk, but also understanding that his versatility from a defensive perspective is what really helps his Brooklyn team. You see him on the weak side, and as that ball is penetrated to the basket, Kevin Durant gets over there, the one-legged jump, doesn't foul, is able to block the shot. He's an unbelievable offensive player. He's a very good defensive player. His vision is excellent. He can rebound the basketball. There's not anything that Kevin Durant can't do on the floor. And that's why we look at him. And, again, we talk about all these other people. There's a unicorn in the league. There's a freak in the league. Kevin Durant is a different species. The way he plays the game, it's just different. And I think we've seen him for so long, we kind of forget how
take him for granted. Take him for granted.
This guy is a great basketball player. Great basketball player.
I say it all the time. People get bored with greatness. They do. They see it all the time. Like, oh, that's Durant. He does that all the time. Or LeBron. They put up those numbers, and people are like, oh, yeah, that's LeBron. If anybody else had that singular game, we'd be all over it. Oh, did you see so-and-so the other night? Like Sherm said, Durant's going out there, and he's doing it every night. It's consistent.
Loves the ball.
Yeah, definitely we started noticing his defense once he got to Golden State, because people kind of just, glossed over that, but he's blossomed into a two-way player. Now let's talk about someone else who's blossoming, and that is former Toronto Raptor Yuta Watanabe, one of the best, actually the best three-point shooter by field goal percentage right now in the league, and also a real great role player on a team that's found its identity. Jonsey, you're going to dig into what's making Utah so effective for the Brooklyn Nets.
I think he's, we always talk about being a star in your role. He understands his role, and he works within the confines to get what he can get. He knows he's a three-point shooter on the break there, runs to the corner. Here he is, another one. Watch him. Knows where he's going to get his shot, gets to the corner. Great vision by Ben Simmons to find him, catch and shoot. And that's time and time in the gym, being ready, knowing these are the kinds of things that I'm going to get. Defense collapsed. There he is. Comes along the baseline. Defenders aren't paying attention. He's one of those guys, and that's why he was so loved in Toronto here, because he was quiet in terms of, offensively. He's not a guy that was asking for the ball or you had to run plays for. Here's my role. Okay, these are where my shots are coming from. I'll work even harder to get my shots where I know they're coming from. I'll run the floor. I'll cut to the basket. I'll do all the other things defensively that will keep me on the floor as well. He's a great teammate and a great role player for any team.
And when he was with the Raptors, I remember talking to coaches about Utah, and they talked about how he's giving. He gives everything he has to the team in practice, in games, in the locker room. Whatever you knew, he gives that energy beyond his skill set.
Ask Anthony Edwards.
And those are the best players to be around. Guys who are just giving of themselves, the energy they give to the positiveness of a locker room, the impact on a game. And to me, that's the greatest compliment you can get as a role player. Your skills are one thing, but when a coach says you just give everything to the team, That's about the highest compliment you can get.
Great mentality, willing to risk it all. He talked about after that Anthony Edwards dunk. He talked about he'd do that every single time. He doesn't care whether he's on SportsCenter or not. Unfortunately for Utah Watanabe fans, he won't be on the court against the Toronto Raptors with that lower body injury. I believe it's a calf strain or a quad strain. But you don't have to look far to see the effects of the Toronto Raptors' skill development and player development team. Sherm, we were talking about it earlier. Last night, Norm Powell, 32 points, 22 in the fourth quarter to help his squad get a huge W. Talk about Norm's development too, because this is another guy that the Raptors kind of built into a premier player.
Yeah, at one point the Spurs were that organization that they got those non-draft late second round picks, late first round picks, and they turned them into these players. The Raptors have taken that mantle and have run with it. They've done a great job, and credit Masai's vision. The 905 was a game plan for Masai to say, hey, we need our own G League team so that we can get into this game of developing players in our own backyard, in our own system, and we can continue to build the organization, the franchise. Masai is big into youth. So when you get young players and develop them, you've invested, you start to reap the rewards at some point. Either they become good players for your franchise or they become good pieces to move on.
Yeah.
And I think that Masai has done a great job in terms of that. The organization has done a great job. The 905 have done a great job. And ultimately, the key guys in a championship run that had to fill in the voids were guys from the 905. Guys like Freddie and Pascal, Norm, all these guys. And Utah's another one, a guy who got reps in the 905, played with this team. The development process here is big. We talk about it all the time. Developing and winning doesn't usually happen.
To Sherm's point about the assets, and you develop your own people too. DeMar DeRozan developed to the point where the San Antonio Spurs said, yeah, we'll give you Kawhi for that guy because he's an all-star.
They knew what they were getting.
Yeah, they knew what they were getting. And Jakob Poeltl, another one. I mean, he was a high pick, but still you have to when you have a high pick, you have to draft the right guy, the right attitude, and develop him. Because for years, teams like Minnesota, Sacramento, they were in the lottery.
Squandering picks.
They were getting high picks, and all of a sudden they pick somebody who looks shiny and new coming out of college or from Europe or an international player, and then nothing happens. Why? Because the developmental piece is missing. So, those guys turn into assets for you as well.
All right, well, that does it for another episode of Raptors Today. We'll see you guys next week. Do remember the Toronto Raptors take on the Utah Watanabe-less Brooklyn Nets Friday night, 7:30. You can catch that on the Sportsnet family of networks, including Sportsnet The Fan 590 on the radio call. I'm Akil Augustine for Sherm, Akil, Jonsey. Thank you guys for watching. Shout out to Jake, too. We'll see you next time.